Welcome to Caribbean Focus. Caribbean Focus is the community voice of the Caribbean Research Center at Medgar Evers College, the weekly radio program highlighting Caribbean educational, cultural, and social affairs, airs on WNYE 91.5 FM, and we're streaming live on Facebook at Caribbean Focus CF, as well as Caribbean Research Center at MEC. I am your host, Hermina Marcellin. Our special guest today is the newly appointed Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs at Medgar Evers College, Dr. Antoinette A. Coleman. Dr. Coleman is currently the Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at the University System of Maryland in the Office of Academic and Student Affairs. I would like to welcome Dr. Antoinette to Caribbean Focus.
Hi, Miss Hermina. Thank you for the invitation.
You are most welcome. Dr. Coleman, it is fitting to have you as an honored guest on Caribbean Focus as we're actually nearing the end of Women's History Month, to even speak further on your achievements as a Black woman. Please, can you share with us a little bit more about your background, Dr. Coleman?
Well, I've been in higher ed for about over 30 years. But I think my higher education desires and wishes began when I was small. You know, I always liked to play teacher in classroom. And after doing that and watching my teachers in elementary school, middle school, and high school, I decided, I really don't want to be a teacher because they do a whole lot of work, and they have to take care of a lot of people. But, as you know from my background, I am a social worker by training, both at the clinical level and at the research level. But one day, I always remembered that I said, I want to be an educator. And so I said, but I also like helping people. So when I was building my career, I started trying to add, do I really want to be a teacher? Do I really want to help people? And then someone said to me, well, you can combine both. And that's how I got back into education using my social work skills. And I always wanted to be the boss of the school. And I always wanted to be the boss of the school. So someone said, well, you can be the boss of the school, but it'll take some time, and it'll take some work, and it'll take some energy, but don't lose your desire to want to help people to learn, to want to give back for those people who gave to you to help you learn. So that's who I am. I started out questioning whether I wanted to be an educator. Did I want to help people? And over the trajectory of my career, I learned that I could do both. And that is who I am. I love helping students. And even on a very, very macro level, making sure that policies are in place, services are in place for students to get what they need, particularly our underserved populations of students.
I would like to mention that you come to Medgar Evers with an extensive background in academic leadership. How are you applying your leadership experience to your role as the provost of Medgar Evers College?
Well, to answer that question, my leadership is really a combination of everything that people have taught me, that I have learned over my career, to be able to really service students, to be very, very student-centered. My career has included being a teaching assistant, a research assistant, a faculty member, a department chair, dean, assistant vice president, and as you said, an associate vice chancellor for academic affairs. And at each step of the way, what I learned was there is your biggest goal in higher education is to make sure students of any generation are getting what they need to have successful careers, to move the social mobility needle for everyone who comes through the doors of higher education to a much higher level. So working across the platform with all populations of students is what my leadership brings to Medgar Evers and what I've learned from numbers of leaders who've been successful in this field.
Thank you. And you spoke on some of your leadership qualities and the background and your background in bringing this experience to Medgar Evers. How does your background as a social worker shape your understanding of Medgar Evers College's social justice mission?
That's a really good question, and that's probably your favorite question of today. And you have to stop me. You know, social workers, as a trained social worker, the primary focus is the client that you're working with, whether in their home or a group of clients in the community. And what you're always looking for as a social worker is equity. You want there to be a fair and equal playing field for everyone that you work with as a social worker. In thinking about applying for the job of provost here at Medgar Evers, that was the most attractive piece to me, the social justice mission. What it spoke to me was in this role, the person in this role could work very diligently to make sure that the students they could get what they need to be able to compete highly in today's global market. So from my leadership perspective, it's giving the students all of the tools they need. Since our president frequently says that social justice is in the DNA of Medgar Evers College, well, it's in all of our DNAs. We should not let a student come into the institution and not feel like they belong, not feel like they can't be successful. In this leadership role, that is the most important thing, to align the social justice mission of Medgar Evers College with every student's educational experience and the social experience that they get while they're here, so that they can learn to network, so that they can learn to, when they leave here, that they can look back and say, Medgar trained me to be who I am and who I will be.
And as you so eloquently quoted Dr. Patricia Ramsey, who is the first Black woman president. She is also quoted as saying, Dr. Coleman is a seasoned higher education leader who possesses a wealth of academic affairs leadership experience and demonstrated execution for developing, implementing, and managing initiatives at the system, campus, school, and department levels. She brings talent, experience, enthusiasm, and tenacity to this key senior leadership role, and is quoted as saying that she is excited to welcome Dr. Coleman to the MEC family and look forward to working very closely with her to enhance the academic enterprise and the lives of our students. So I will ask, in what ways do you hope to impact on the student experience at Medgar Evers College? And are there any new initiatives which you hope to champion while here at Medgar Evers College?
One of the biggest things everywhere I've been, and most of all, it will be what my focus here at Medgar Evers College is to make sure that our students have the state-of-the-art learning opportunities. And what do I mean by that? You're a student in high school. You're thinking about your college. One of the things I want them to do is to think Medgar Evers College first. By looking at the innovative programs that we offer, to see for them, there's a career path for me when I come to Medgar Evers College. And in being able to do that, it requires working with the faculty. And when I say work with the faculty, I mean that the faculty and my office will work collaboratively to make sure that the students' needs in the classroom and in other co-curricular activities are met. I've been designing or what we call creating programs, academic programs, for many, many years. In that role, we've always looked for programs the students would enroll in that would give them a solid foot in the workforce. And also to be lifelong learners. So as they wanted to come back for studies and even to pursue a PhD or to go to professional school. So what do I hope to bring here to Medgar? I hope to work collaboratively with the faculty, listen to the students about what they see they would like their careers to be, and to design academic programs that are most competitive with all of the schools, both in New York City, New York State, and in our surrounding areas. And we know we talk a lot about online these days because the pandemic has shown we can do a lot of things online. But also making sure as we deliver programs online that our clients, our students are getting the best experience both in person and online. So innovation, creativity, what supports our students' needs to be successful, and not just always the traditional student. We think of the 18-year-old coming to college, but our adult learners who wish to return to school, to retool themselves, or to upskill themselves in what they're doing. So that's what I hope to do here while at Medgar, is to move the academic along.
And even on the notion of being aspirational, is there anything that you would like to speak to our viewing and listening audience on?
Yes, well, one, I would like for them to enroll in Medgar. I'd like them to take a look at the inventory of programs we have, but I just want them to know that we're going to be accountable to them. We're going to work on continuous improvement. You know, I know the president has her access point of change, and I love it. And why I love it is because we must be accountable to the people we serve. Because when we serve students, we serve the community. So for every one student that we put out into the workforce, we change a whole block in that community, because that student can come back and do just wonderful things to uplift the community. So we, as members of academic affairs working across the platform with our enrollment colleagues, we must be accountable to the students we serve. And we must never get stuck in one place. We must always evaluate ourselves. We must also think of continuous improvement, as the president says. But that takes understanding what is needed. So the jobs that were needed pre-COVID, the jobs have changed. Our environment has changed. So Medgar will be changing to meet the needs of both its environment, its workforce, its students, and most definitely the community that we serve. We are a highly engaged community. And so we offer programs, and we need to continually offer programs that bring our community into the school. And as I said earlier, equity is really one of the big focal points for me. I like I like to see that everything that we do is for all people that we serve. And we have to be able to sustain it. Because starting something and stopping something isn't in the best interest of an institution and not for our students. So our students must know that there's always going to be a good path for them in their educational careers. And number one, with equity, when you provide equity in an institution for students, even for staff and faculty, is you gain student success. Student success is our priority at Medgar. We want to see students cross the stage with their diplomas.
Dr. Coleman, you mentioned equity and accountability, which actually makes, as you mentioned, the thematic idea proposed by Dr. Ramsey, the thematic idea of access point for change. And they include accountability, continuous improvement, community engagement, equity, sustainability, student success, which fills and spells out access. How will you work with Dr. Ramsey to fulfill this vision?
Well, Dr. Ramsey and I already work very collaboratively together, um, helping when we see needs. You know, a lot of entities will approach institutions of higher education. You know, this project sounds good for your institution. That project sounds good for your institution. But Dr. Ramsey is very planful, and so am I. And we're very strategic in what we do. We want to make sure that the programs and opportunities that we offer to our students, as I said earlier, are accountable to the students. And what I mean by that is we want to offer degrees that will give them a career path that they can aspire to meet their goals, or if they change their minds in a couple of years and say, well, I want to do something different, they have the foundation to move into what they see as their next step. Building foundations for students to have a successful career starts with the institution being accountable in what they offer to the students. So the programs that we offer here at Medgar, I think that a lot of people do not know that we're very, very highly ranked in the number of students that go leave our biology program and go to medical school or pursue professional degrees in the area. We are a campus that cares about what happens to our students once they graduate. So being accountable takes a number of forms. The young lady who comes or the young man who comes through the door who says, I don't know what I want to do right now, we help them find their way. When someone is feeling very challenged, as you know, a number of our students have mental health challenges. They have food insecurities. The housing is unstable. We, not only the academic affairs side, but we have a very strong student success and enrollment management division that looks at those types of things that affect our students. So when we talk about accountability, we're talking about the whole student. The president is constantly in the community working with legislators to try to find funding that can support a number of things that are not covered in our budget. So tuition, yes, we get that from the student, but we need more to be able to help a student and to be accountable to that student. And that's what the president does. And that's what my role is to support her in carrying out all of those goals for the university. Her vision is what my office supports. And yes, academic affairs has its goals and its visions, and our vision is to make sure we produce a highly educated population of students.
Many students and faculty in the MEC community and the surrounding community have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. What is the state of the college now as students return to in-person sessions?
The pandemic impacted not just Medgar Evers College, it impacted all higher education institutions. And what is a bigger point to your question, which is a great question too, is that there are a population of students who started to learn from their computer screen. So there is a lot of work that we have to do to socialize those students to actual in-person learning. And we're looking at, I look at a lot of the data from K through 12. And they are struggling with some of the things that we're struggling with. For those students who may have been in the 7th or 8th grade, and now they're returning to in-person learning, it's how they learn. And they're not learning the same way the students did pre-COVID. So one of the things that we're taking a hard look at here in Medgar is how students learn, particularly the students that we are getting who spend 2 years looking at their computer screens and trying to figure out how to remain engaged in the learning process. So yes, it has impacted Medgar, it has impacted a lot of institutions. But for Medgar, we are needing to look at how students learn, what they need to learn in this new environment, and to adapt to that. So it's in-person learning, but it's more about learning ourselves, faculty, as how students learn. Because you can't undo the pandemic, the outcomes of the pandemic, but you can address it by being flexible. Students need more high touch. They need more flexibility. And we have to provide those opportunities for them to gain the knowledge and skills they need through looking at how we deliver education today.
And your response, Dr. Coleman, actually answers my next question as to identifying some of the higher educational issues and the fact that these issues are throughout CUNY. And you went further to offer some ways that we could address these issues. Please, if you could speak further on that question, since you you answered it.
I'm sorry to answer the question. Maybe you should say stop. Okay. But these are issues that are just so, they're just so, I'm just so passionate about. Now,
Yes.
you asked me about the social worker part of me, and well, the mental health issues. The mental health issues of students are on the rise. And they're not, I'm not going to say that they weren't there before. I'm just saying that the pandemic acted as a trigger to bring and to make individual, particularly our younger students, comfortable with saying, I don't feel good today. My emotional ability to handle all this is not that great today. And I'm applauding them for that because it's too often that we in society say, suck it up, you can forge on, or my favorite one, just soldier on. Well, when you're feeling bad, both emotionally as well as physically, you can't do your best work. And there needs to be someone there available to help you through that process. The number one finding post-COVID is the need for mental health services, well-being services, how to manage some of the things in your life more openly to be successful. And that is one of the things, and I have to applaud the faculty that we have, and particularly the staff that we have in our student success and enrollment management area, because they have an array of services to address, whether it's emotional, whether it's well-being, whether you're having housing issues, food insecurities, clothing issues, those kind of things that people just didn't want to talk about. But our students are poised after being in a quarantine life that they know are real problems for them. So higher education has to flex with that. And I am proud to say that Medgar is flexing with those areas. Yes, do we have more that we need to build out? Always, because they're in higher ed institution, my college, Medgar Evers College, must always flex to meet the ongoing needs of our students. That might have been too much of my social work soapbox.
Well, you did mention your passion in speaking on social justice. Continuing the discussion on higher education issues, can you talk about the retention at and graduation rates at Medgar Evers College? What are the numbers, and who does it affect?
Well, we need to increase our numbers. I'd like to put that out there. We're not at the 50% or the 60% level today. But what we are doing is we're looking at all aspects of the institution, particularly around maybe some of the barriers to retain students. You know, institutions often don't really know that some of their policies that they have in place could really be barriers to students being retained at the institution. So here at Medgar, we're going to start working with work groups to be able to look at what are the institutional barriers? What are the barriers at the college that may be impeding students from staying with us? You know, we have wonderful advisors. We have faculty who mentor students. We're looking to see if we need to enhance those programs at any way. Do we need to locate our advisors in and position them working closer with the faculty so that the student and is very clear that here's my advisor, here's my faculty person, they're working together on my behalf. We're looking at those kinds of enhancements that we can make at Medgar. In addition to, so our retention rate is what our focus is. We can get students to enroll, but the key thing for institutions is retaining them. And it's just not a Medgar thing. It is a CUNY thing also. Other CUNY institutions are experiencing a downturn in their retention. Our graduation, in terms of moving our graduation needle more to the 50 and 60 and 70% of students, we've got to dig down deep. We've got to drill down to see where our students are having difficulties immediately. When we can't wait until they get to the second year, we need to know in their first semester, whether they're an adult student, an evening weekend student, a student coming directly from high school, we've got to dig down and find out what is causing a student to have difficulty. Is it a class? Is it personal? Or is it something that the institution has put in place that's not working for students that we have to adjust to? So those are the things that we're looking at to try to bring and move our retention rates out of the lower side of 50% to the upper side of 50%. And when you start retaining students, their progression to graduation, our graduation will be on that side of 50%. the hire.
And more importantly, Dr. Coleman, your research interests include work on African American males from impoverished communities. What are some of your more revealing findings from your research, and how do these findings inform your work here at Medgar Evers College?
Well, one of the things that my research really showed was some of the wrong people were studying African American males. African American males need to, just like this is Women's History Month, and we have applauded all the outstanding women in our society. But for males, males need that nest of communication. This is probably going to sound really funny, but some of my work took me into barbershops, male barbershops. And what I learned in the male barbershop is that you could get a PhD if you sat in the male barbershop at a greater degree than anything that I've studied in research, policy, and administration. African American males, to make it very, very clear, need to have role models right there in front of them. They don't all have to have PhDs, master's degrees, but they need role models, positive role models. This is nothing new, that they can reach out and touch, that they can talk to, that they can learn from. Because we are losing African American males to the wrong kinds of role models. You know, we need our males to step up. One of the programs that I enjoyed as a young social worker was the Big Brother, Big Sister program. It was not very diverse in the beginning with some colleagues of mine when we first became involved with it. But we began to diversify that program. We had African Americans who were native born here. We had Caribbean Big Brothers. We had Latinx Big Brothers. We diversified the population that these various young men could identify with. Not identifying with the guy who had the flashy car and the wad of cash that were going to lead them down the wrong way. So what did my research prove? It proved that Black males are most receptive when they can identify with someone who can identify with them. And to bring them into college, they need to know that they have, which is a new word, a sense of belonging, that they need to be able to belong, not to be counted, not to be something that an institution sees as a way of getting more money from the federal government because you check a minority box. But they need to know that there are services in the school for them. It's beyond just, there are fraternities and sororities, but there are also a need for Black men to just sit down and have a conversation. It's also for them, it's helpful. One group of Black males said, I just need to understand some things about females other than just what I know about my mother. They need to be able to talk, and young African American males do better in higher education when there are supports there that are for them. And Medgar has a Black Male Initiative program, which is what another part that was made Medgar a favorite for me to apply.
And you're mentioning the big brother, big sister, and even with your research, understanding that role models are very important. Do you plan on implementing any of these new initiatives or any new initiatives for addressing the retention and graduation rates at Medgar Evers College?
Well, currently we have what is it's called a PBI, predominantly Black institution funding coming from the feds, where that funding is focused on the retention. is funding directly focused on the retention of Black males in higher education. So there is coaching that is being done with them. There is what I want to say checkpoints, trying to get 300 Black males enrolled in this program to to support them in their to be retained at the institution to graduate. So yes, we have a program in existence which is being supported with funding to do that. It's working across the academic side of the house where we have faculty involved in assisting Black males with areas that they may be having difficulty in academics, or to help them explore areas that they would like to pursue further toward their career path, and also those supportive services, just to keep them moving forward, coaching and counseling and those kinds of services that are directed toward them, that are about understanding them.
Thank you. Dr. Coleman, you have held and you held leadership positions at three other HBCUs before your position at Morgan. Tell us about your experience at these universities.
Okay, so I started off, my first HBCU wasn't my first college or university experience. I started off in an R1 institution. And then I realized that we were frequently at the R1s going to HBCUs too, and that the R1 was a predominantly white institution. We're going to the HBCUs and getting information that R1s, research ones, institutions just didn't have access to. And at that point, I decided, well, why am I going to just always go there? I could work there. So my first opportunity was at a small urban college, which became a university, like Medgar Evers. And working at that institution helped me to know how I could use my social work skills to bring the community into the academic setting. To actually, that not that the academic setting was the all in all, but it was important for students to learn how they could work with the community. And of course, these were social work students, and learn how to work with people of diverse backgrounds and people of diverse incomes. And so starting there with a small HBCU at that time helped me to not only just work with my students, but for my students to learn how the classroom is just a subset of the learning environment that they need. So we did a lot of community engagement, a lot of community training, not only for us training individuals, but for individuals teaching us what the community needed so we could teach students how to go about and work in the community. Then I moved to an institution that was larger and developed a center for research around the welfare reform period, where women were returning into the workforce from having received subsidized assistance. And there it was a tremendous learning experience because while we were helping those ladies get into training programs, they helped us shape the kind of training programs that were needed for women in Southeastern Virginia. And out of that was a call to action by the federal government, and they wanted to begin to train more masters of social work students, workers in the Caribbean. So it was just a fluke, you know. We wrote a proposal. We didn't think we would get it, but we wanted to get it because it was the Caribbean and it was warmer, even warmer than Virginia, and we received it. So for a period of 3 years, we were in the Caribbean learning about the Caribbean. Actually brought faculty. They lived in St. Thomas, St. Croix, and St. John's. They work with the University of the Virgin Islands, and we delivered the master's program from Norfolk State University in the Caribbean. And we went on because the students were just wonderful students, and we saw a lot of opportunity for them and to work and to grow and to help the University of the Virgin Islands ensure that it had faculty. We started to offer the PhD program there also. So that experience propelled me on to come back and to my next HBCU, where I served as a dean, and to build out programs in social work, nursing, the behavioral sciences, including sociology, psychology, and human resources. So the combination of actually where you have an opportunity at HBCUs to dig into your community and provide the resources that the community needs through education and through self-learning. Because if the institution doesn't learn from the community, the institution is missing out on a big opportunity. And that is one of the most attractive things that I learned when I was reading about Medgar Evers College and talking to people about Medgar Evers College. So it's been a combination of community and students and us just going out there and taking, I would say, what are the principles of a discipline and applying them, but letting the people tell us, well, hey, wait a minute, Dr. C, this is what we need. And we were always open to listening.
And your response contains some key mentions, ideas on community and the Caribbean. Medgar Evers, and this is to say that Medgar Evers College is in many ways a microcosm of the Caribbean American diaspora. Enrollment figures show that there are high percentages of students from Trinidad and Tobago, St. Lucia, where I'm from, and almost half from Jamaica, Haiti, or Guyana. How important do you think it is to recognize the cultural and ethnic heritage of Caribbean people at Medgar Evers College?
Now you're asking a social worker. Culture comes first with us. Culture, social equity, all of those factors come first. It is important to recognize everyone's culture because culture shapes learning and culture shapes change. So if you understand the individual and what has made the individual, their socialization, their economic understanding of where they come from, it can help the students grow in their careers. It's just like, okay, I named the 3 islands that I predominantly work, and they're U.S. Virgin, they're the U.S. territories. But while there, I was introduced to a number of different islands because my faculty would say, oh, so-and-so's aunt lives in Trinidad. Let's go over to Trinidad for the weekend and learn. Well, what I learned, it was very clear that culture plays a role. To generalize that what was happening in St. Thomas was not the same thing that was happening in Trinidad. Carnival in St. Thomas is not like carnival in Trinidad. Not saying one is better than the other, but what I learned for myself and needs to be brought into the educational experience is that culture forms the foundation of how people learn and how they see the world. And from there, if you can respect each other's culture, because see, it just can't be my culture or your culture. You have to learn to respect everyone's culture or be willing to learn about it. And in the process of learning about it, you begin to look at what can be used to enhance education. So years ago, when I was a faculty member, I taught something called diverse cultures, and it allowed students to really get a sense of, oh, that wasn't a problem in my culture, but it was a problem in yours. But this is what a problem was in my country. So we learned to write policies. They were faux policies. We're making them up for class. But we started to write policies that would address different cultures, that would bring about equity and social change in their respective cultures, because they could learn from each other and take things back to if they were international students. And at all of the institutions that I've worked, I've had a high preponderance of all of the students that you have named. I mean, the different islands of students in the
Yes.
Caribbean, especially St. Lucia's, at one of my earlier institutions.
And speaking on culture shaping learning and culture impacting and shaping change, the Caribbean Research Center has been a staple at Medgar Evers College for over 30 years. How do you envision working with CRC to best serve the Caribbean American community?
Well, now you're going to get me in trouble with Dr. Irish Bramble. But what I would like to see is that the Caribbean Research Center become a central hub, not only in Brooklyn, but a central hub in New York City, where people go to get their data analytics about the Caribbean and how we, in providing that information, we can connect people here in New York State, New York City, and the region with individuals in the Caribbean. I have a little bias about that because even though I'm no longer working at the institution, I get at least every holiday, every special holiday of their country, I get an update as to what we're moving forward, where we're stuck in the Caribbean. It would be great if we could just go to a centralized location, get the data we need, because we don't always have the resources, to that you may have in the States. I would like to see the Caribbean Research Center to be the research hub that people begin to say, oh, I can call them. Just like we have all of these clearinghouses, we could be a clearinghouse for information too. So now you got me in trouble with Dr. Irish Brown. So I'm going to look to you to get me out of that trouble.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Coleman. Um, and not to put you in further trouble, but what are your plans to continue working with the center and its entities, and in addition to the Caribbean, I'm sorry, the Center for Black Literature? How and what plans do you have to continue to support
Well,
those centers?
definitely, I'm going to support all of my centers. We have also the Center for Law and Social Justice, and we
Yes.
also have the Du Bois Bunch Center. The directors are the leads. They give me their strategic plans. I will comment like, maybe that's a little bit too, not in the mission of the university. The centers operate in the community as a part of the mission of, of Medgar Evers College. Okay. They drive their own funding. They have to raise their money to support themselves. The institution provides a lot of support. All of the leadership, the directors are supported by the college. Staff in several of particularly the CRC, the staff is supported by the college. So we will continue to support their staff in carrying out their missions. But we also know that the focus of the centers in their ability to pull off their programs, they will need the support of people that will provide in their fundraising efforts. So fundraising is very critical. The president, she is very supportive of talking to people about the centers, but the center directors are the lead. And as the provost, I look at their strategic initiatives that they wish to pursue. I understand who are some of their sources of support, but we, yes, definitely will consider continue. We are supporting, let me say, we are supporting them in their community role and building the bridge with Medgar Evers College.
The legacy of Medgar Evers and Medgar Wiley Evers is one of strength as a civil rights activist, courage as the first state field secretary of the NAACP in Mississippi, and resilience as an organizer for voter registration efforts and economic boycotts, and commitment to investigating crimes perpetrated against Black people. I posed this very question to Dr. Ramsey during our last interview, and will now ask you, how do you intend to continue with this legacy at Medgar Evers College?
Well, from the academic side, because Ramsey talks about at the 50,000 foot, the whole university, I'm going to be very, very direct here. We have academic programs that are about, particularly our criminal justice program, fits right into the legacy of Mr. Medgar Wiley Evers. That program is teaching students how to look beyond just incarceration. But why is there incarceration? What are the social phenomena that are increasing incarceration among our Black males? We've always been, um, unjustly incarcerated. Look at how many people are making the news that they're finding that they didn't commit a crime. And it was all because someone's social preference was that that's the person who committed the crime. We're training students to do that. We're training students to do that. Not only are we training students to do that, but we also are looking very heavily into our programs that we do on diversity. Right now, we are doing workshops where we're looking at diversity and the climate around diversity. The legacy that we wish to continue is, as the president said, not just about the DNA around social justice, but we want to walk and talk that. We want to make sure that our students understand this institution is 53 years old. It was not born like most institutions. Oh, yes, we want to have a college in Central Brooklyn. It wasn't born like that. The people who were the founders of this institution had to fight for this institution to be here. And not only fight for it to be here, they had to fight for it to be able to be a 4-year institution. And even today, and I just came back from Washington, I'm not going to name the congressperson, they said, "Oh, is that a community college?" And I said, "Of course not. We are a 4-year degree granting institution." And one of the things that I didn't mention earlier, which I slipped my mind because you had me talking about social justice and I get off on a tangent, is that we are looking to offer graduate degrees here at Baker. We are moving. The president has given her support. The faculty, they've given their support. We want to change our standing from just an undergraduate institution to a graduate authorizing institution. So that's going to be some steps. We're going to have to go all the way to Albany and all the way back through CUNY and up and down. But we want to, shortly, to be able to say, and it's going to take it's not going to happen overnight, to say that we can offer a master's degree. And we're not going to stop there. Once we know it's accountable, sustainable, and it's what our community wants, and we know the degree is what our community wants, we will keep on moving this institution. And I think that's what Mr. Evers would want to see. Our people of diverse backgrounds, of diverse cultures, working together to move our students so that they can move our communities. And that's how I see Medgar is positioned to do that.
Thank you so much for this passionate response. Any final thoughts for the MEC community? Final thoughts for me on how I'm going to take you out of trouble,
Dr.
get you out.
Well, one of the things that I would like to say is that I would like that as people listen to your show to know that Medgar Evers College is an outstanding opportunities for students to get their degrees. We are here to support students to get their degrees. We are going to be accountable to our students very, very very, very, very deeply. I don't have enough varies that I can say. And we want them to enroll in our institution and we want them to stay and graduate. And for the centers, please support our centers. You know, they have donate here. So go to their websites and we don't care how much, a dollar, $5, all of this because our students work in our centers. So they get a living learning laboratory when they work with the centers, as well as our students when they're in their academic programs. So that's just like to put that plug in to say, we are here. We've been here for 53 years. We're going to make another 153. I don't think I'll be around to see that, but I'll be there in spirit.
Dr. Coleman, thank you so much for this well-informed interview. It was an honor having you on Caribbean Focus as we continue to celebrate Women's History Month and most recently Black History Month. You are indeed a testament to that, to the cause. And I want to thank my viewing and listening audience for tuning in. Thank you so much, Dr. Coleman.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're
Have a
welcome.
great day.
You do the same. This has been Caribbean Focus. I am your host, Hermina Marcellin. Thanks for listening and watching. Be well.